up top, we see Jesse Piland on Boros Monument against Gryffindor Mishlove on Selesnya tokens.
This is going to be a fun one.
I am really excited about this. Two sweet decks as we see Gryffindor kick it off with a Razor Verge Thicket. Ooh, Elegant Parlor over on Jesse's side. Bidding a Torch the Tower. Not for this matchup.
No. We've seen a lot of Magic today that has been around cascading from the turn 1 play. Not that kind of scene here. Torch the Tower is not going to play.
And just a Verge from Gryffindor. This is one where both of these players are targeting really specific kinds of the metagame, and I don't think it's each other.
Right, right. That is going to be something that, as far as these main deck more narrow cards, is going to advantage Piland a little bit because all these rummaging effects. Fear of missing out can just say, all right, if I got a card of the situation, I'll just discard it.
Okay, well, and Fear of Missing Out does discard that Phyrexian Dragon Engine. A lot of way towards Delirium being an artifact creature. And over on Mishlove's side, there's an Overlord of the Hotwoods coming down right on time.
Well, players starting to go to work. We have yet to establish any of the marquee cards, but the game's shaping up.
And there's that Everywhere token. Mishlove just has perfect mana this game.
Yes.
Did not cost any life.
Yeah, you were talking about how this is a pain-free mana base, and really the only way that this could go sideways in terms of mana would be Mishlove flooding, but we're a long way from having that conversation.
Okay, well, here's land number 3 for Piland, as well as the namesake and Monument to Endurance, and an attack with Fear of Missing Out, knocking Mishlove down to 18. First blood.
And Monument's big. It's not going to be massively impactful yet, but really as early as next turn. If you have that helping hand, you get the Phyrexian Dragon Engine back. Maybe you have too many cards in hand to really start going for that, but a second copy? I don't know. It can go pretty berserk pretty quickly.
All right, and here's Elspeth Stormslayer. We've talked about her basically all weekend because she's making a big splash in Standard as it is. I'm really excited to see what this does in the matchup.
Yeah, starts by making 2 1/1s. Not the most exciting thing, but it's going to build some value over time and plays really well with the Caretaker's talent. Just having double tokens so you get to that Anthem mode, it'll be very easy to close the game very quickly with this card.
Right, I know I personally played a lot of Anointed Procession when it was in Standard the first time, and it's kind of a card where you go, oh yeah, no, that's pretty funny, and then your opponent untaps with it, and you're just like, how did you make 16 permanents that turn? What just happened?
Oh, me losing the match was the punchline.
All right, as we go back over to Piland, who is tapping 3 for a Tersa Light Shatter, which is going to be 2 discards for this Monument to Endurance.
Yeah, depending on what's going on in the hand, it's kind of interesting what you want to do. I have to figure most of the time you're going to select for drawing a card as one of the abilities you definitely want to use on the Monument. Making a treasure also generally is going to be able to continue, and then I think more often than not, your opponent loses 3 life will be the final ability you choose on the card.
Yeah, it's really tough. There's part of me in this matchup that thinks that life might just be pretty important.
Yeah.
That card gives a lot of closing speed. How many lava spikes can an opponent survive, you know?
Yeah, and realistically, I think Piland's trying to do all 3 every turn.
Yes, yeah, totally. And, all right, we see a land and another Fear of Missing Out hit the graveyard, which means that Piland is delirious at this point.
Yeah, we have 2 creatures, but one's an artifact and one's an enchantment. We are pretty long on card types in graveyard.
All right, so here's a Battlefield Forge to join the treasure. Looks like Mishlove took 3 from the Monument. Seeing a serve for 5. Fear of Missing Out trigger. Likely untapping the Light Shatter.
Yeah, not really afraid of any blocks here, so just trying to do the most damage makes sense.
Right, this is a spot where the strength of Elspeth is she's pretty good at attacking creatures, and she's really good at turning the corner by making a bunch of flyers, but it does not sound like that is what Piland is in the business, or excuse me, Mishlove is in the business of right now. All right, so here's the first chump block in combat number 1. 2 coming across, Mishlove taking that, Piland serving for 3 more, a second chump block. All right, treasure sacked, forge tapped, Guardian of New Benalia on the table. See if Piland goes for the free rummage.
So the Guardian of New Benalia, this is a actually pretty significant card here. Just being a discard outlet that works all the time, because it means now we can start triggering our Monument on our opponent's turn.
And notably, it looks like Piland did not choose to discard on his turn, which implies to me that he did not just want to rummage. He had already done treasure and he had already done life, so he could have just discarded to draw a different card.
Interesting. In fairly short order, we're definitely going to see that Phyrexian Dragon Engine coming back to the battlefield at some point. That monument is going to do a lot of damage very quickly.
All right, here's temporary lockdown from Mishlove.
And the lockdown, this is kind of putting on display something pretty fundamental about the marquee cards in the matchup. The fact that Monument to Endurance just costs 3. Similar to Caretaker's Talent, it gets around the lockdown.
All right, we see Piland respond, discard a Battlefield Forge, rummages it away.
Putting some cards in the graveyard is also going to be nice because we're getting close to threshold for the Tursa.
And flashing back the Phyrexian Dragon Engine,
Right.
unearthing it.
Yes.
And even if that happens, there is still Delirium in graveyard between the fear of missing out towards the tower and land as another Phyrexian Dragon Engine gets binned. Looks like for 3 points of damage.
I think it's also pretty telling the way that Piland is just going after Mishlove's life total. Pretty confident that this Monument to Endurance is going to cross the finish line, and Elspeth cannot really do anything about that.
Right, and this is starting to look like it's threatening lethal.
Yeah, we're getting very close.
So Beans is the next play for Mishlove. Cards in hand don't feel like the thing that Mishlove is shallow on.
No, and you cannot take them with you. You're a Celestia player, one of the better cards for Mishlove to draw here will be starting to get some of these carrot cakes. But even then, you're really just treading water. You have to actually start looking at ways for you to turn the corner and start applying damage.
Okay, so an untap with Tersa Light Shadow and Monument to Endurance, another fear of missing out, discarding another Phyrexian Dragon Engine.
There is a solid stream of redraws in the graveyard here.
All right, and you can see Piland figuring out what Monument to Endurance mode he would like to choose.
It's hard to go too wrong with draw a card,
It looked like
right?
it might have been draw a card there.
I'm certain that I would make that decision often enough, even though it was incorrect.
Okay, so Screaming Nemesis the follow-up, and now Tersa Light Shatter comes in and gets to actually play a card from the graveyard. Maybe.
The Screaming Nemesis, you know, in addition to just being a nice 3-power haster, it also kind of subtracts from the live draws Mishlove has to try to claw into this game if we can get that trigger off.
All right, you can see Mishlove is more or less priced into taking the hit from the Screaming Nemesis. Doesn't want to lose the ability to gain life. Does block the Light Shatter, falls to 7.
I like that no blocks on the Nemesis. I think that you have to keep the option open to draw a Beza and gain some life.
All right, land number 7 for Mishlove. Overlord of the Hauntwoods, about to be done impending and just be here.
Right, that 6/5's not nothing.
Ooh, the attack for 1, the hallmark of Day of Judgment. Wrath of God, here it is.
Good beats.
All right, Elspeth up to 8.
Yeah, the Elspeth still being on the table is fairly significant there in terms of unearthed Dragon Engine having, you know, haste and double strike.
Right, it is at the point where it kind of does feel like unearthing the Dragon Engine is just to get a bunch of discard triggers with Monument to Endurance.
Right. If at any point there's a second Monument, it'll become very easy for Piland to cross the finish line.
Okay, Piland, let's unearth that Dragon Engine. Discard a couple cards. Looks like a Torch the Tower and a Sheltered by Ghosts. Not what the doctor ordered here.
Oh, we don't need interaction with anything but our opponent's life total.
All right, well, a couple triggers on the stack for Piland here. The nice thing is that with most of these effects, you do get to see the cards before you choose with the Monument. That is not true of cycling within the Aetherdrift set for the most part, but all of these discard then draw things, you do all of that at once, then you choose your modes for Monument.
A high agency construction, you might say.
Listen, it's a monument to agency. It's better in my head.
Yeah, well, I'll allow it.
It's game one.
I'm gonna be polite about it.
Aw.
And say that you did great. Gonna give a quick read to Elspeth. When you see a Planeswalker with that high a life total, you might be thinking, what
Am I
horrible
about to
thing
die?
is about to happen
Yeah.
to me? You see the third ability is a -3, and you realize, oh, not that scary.
Well, there is something to think about here because Elspeth is able to grow and jump the whole board. With Overlords, that's kind of a lot of damage.
Yeah, it certainly is. And especially with, Piland's already used so much mana on this turn. Those soldiers are going to stick around. We're in a position where Mishlove could realistically assemble lethal over the course of 2 turns.
Okay, and it looks like Piland actually went for a draw and a treasure. So that 3 damage not going to be enough at this point.
Makes you wonder if there's some way to have access to a 3rd discard this turn. It's a little tough.
And now you can see Mishlove figuring out what kind of blocks they want to be lining up. Okay, taking the free one with the Overlord. Some tension and turning on your opponents towards the towers.
Right.
Okay, here's the Mycosynth Gardens. And the treasure, teaming up to recommission Phyrexian Dragon Engine, which did enter from the graveyard.
Yep, no matter how you do it, that's templated separately from the Unearth ability, so it's going to be the discard and the draw 3.
Well, if you cast it from the graveyard, it does not quite work, despite it really feeling like it should.
So not so much with Tersa is what you're getting at.
Right, exactly.
But that Mycosynth Gardens, that's significant. Piland's already at so much pressure on Mishlove's life total, but that represents the 2nd monument, which makes it easy.
Right, and notably, Piland did get to discard and draw 3, and because of that discard, did get in for that 3 points of damage from the monument. Mishlove's down to 4.
And we saw that no blocks on the Screaming Nemesis earlier. This would be the window where you would really like to gain some life. Carrot Cake, Beza.
Caretaker's Talent.
Swing and a miss.
Similar to Carrot Cake in first syllable only.
Aesthetically, fairly similar.
All right, so making a copy of Everywhere. The plan here to basically have a mostly, actually mana positive because of Elspeth. There are 2 of them, and it is going to be a card coming off the top from Mishlove.
A Celestia Ritual. I guess it's more in the Soul Ring territory than a ritual, which is maybe overselling the position.
Or Soul Ring for short. All right, here's another land for Mishlove. A lot of mana. But like you said earlier, you can't take it with you.
No. Yeah, Caretaker's Talent copying Everywhere token, that's nice. I like that utility. I like that interaction a lot. It's just coming up so late in the game with so little life to play with.
All right, 4 mana going up top with the Caretaker's Talent. So those are now some big soldiers. All of a sudden, Mishlove's kind of threatening lethal in 2.
We're actually really close to lethal.
Right, this is not far off.
I think we can do 15 damage this turn.
In the words of the late and great Billy Mays, that's a lot of damage. All right, Elspeth up to 9. Whoa, no attacks. Okay.
So this position does just allow Mishlove to lethal in 1 turn. There's just so much damage output with the fully leveled Caretaker's Talent. The Elspeth flies everything next turn.
Okay, but Piland is going to copy the Monument to Endurance right now. And another copy of Recommission from the graveyard is going to bring back Tersa Light Shatter, giving Piland a couple more discards. And I have a feeling it's going to be a couple 3-balls upstairs. And we are going to game 2 with the first one going to Jesse Piland's Boros Monument deck.
Yeah, Monument to Endurance really showed off, why Jesse Piland built this deck around the card.
Right. So we talked about it a little bit in the pregame, but it having a mode for mana, a mode for cards, and a mode for life, most Magic games tend to be about one of those things.
At least
right?
one of those things.
Right. So having that versatility of you saying, okay, early on I kind of want cards. All right, I've got my engines off the ground. It's time to start actually killing my opponent. He did a ton of damage with that card over the course of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And just being an artifact, costing 3 mana, getting around a card like Temporary Lockdown, you just got to stick around and really do some impressive work there. And just in terms of the synergy, the speed, I think, is really what you're seeing on display with the Monument to Endurance. Once you have that on the table, you start threatening lethal pretty quickly. If that Elspeth wasn't part of the game, the creatures would have closed the game in very short order.
So looking at Mishlove's sideboard, is there much really to be done about that? We see paw patch formation.
Yeah, kind of unfortunate to destroy an enchantment and not an artifact. That's a tough pull.
Okay, tear asunder.
But that one, if you play it for 4, it's pretty nice. It always hits the monument. You can hit all the creatures, so it's just the kind of card that always plays. I do think that there is some merit to this Rest in Peace. We saw a lot of that engine as it went being on the back of the Phyrexian Dragon engine, right?
You're totally right.
There's a little bit, it's not huge, but interacting with the Tursa's Graveyard ability, it's not nothing. I don't know if I love 3 copies, but the first copy seems significant. It would have been significant in that game.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So looking over at Piland's side, are you changing much?
You don't really want to mess with success, but that exercise, the Caretaker's talent was going somewhere. I believe we were just 1 turn off of Mishlove presenting lethal, so exercise can really push back against that. And you can use Sheltered by Ghosts for the same kind of thing. You don't want these torched towers, so that makes sense. Lauren of the Third Path, awesome. That seems excellent. And I also like Chandra's Sparkhounder a decent amount. That one's into the territory where you ask how many cards am I boarding out, but again, it's a lot better than Torch the Tower.
Yeah, I can imagine worlds where Piland's going to be a little bit less reliant on the graveyard and maybe even reaches for like Voice of Victory because of how strong it is against cards like Ride's End.
Yeah, that makes sense. And of course, Destroy Evil, looking quite strong against this multiple enchantments matter deck.
And if you like Voice of Victory and want to get some cards like that, you're going to want to get your hands on new Tarkir Dragonstorm product.
That is a really strong card, Voice of Victory, just turning off the opponent's ability to cast spells on either turn, and just one of the many strong and really cool designs from Tarkir Dragonstorm. Not surprising to see this set being really successful, really popular with players.
Right, this is one where it's made a splash on a ton of different formats in a way that I understand I'm pretty biased, but it's pretty cool because it just feels like organic Tarkir stuff going on.
Yeah, really excellent execution of a return to a block. Hey, it's Tarkir. There's dragons. Really kind of
what
a
else
backbone
do you
of life.
want?
Yeah, here's a Mox that references dragons.
Yeah.
You are welcome.
No. You are welcome.
I am welcome.
Well, if you want to pick some of this up, you can get it over at starcitygames.com/MTG-TDM. So our players shuffle up for game 2. I'm really curious, your point on Rest in Peace out of Mishlove's sideboard, I can't help but wonder how much Piland is going to pay credence to that, because I feel like these are 2 kind of off-meta decks, and they're takes on decks that are trying to prey on some specific things. So they have a lot of really good cards and bad ones. So I can imagine a world where you go, I don't know, I go so far over the top of Piland if he's just not able to do his synergy stuff. Maybe it's worth drawing or tripping over an extra copy of Rest in Peace here and there.
Yeah, and there's some stuff that you're just not going to move away from. Your Rest in Peace turns off of Delirium on Fear of Missing Out. Okay, good beats. But to your point, I think Piland could relatively easily move off of the Helping Hand recommission stuff. There's enough ways the deck just plays without that going on, and you don't want to get caught just unable to utilize them at all against a Rest in Peace.
Right, and a reason I think we see both of these players having so much success, both at 6-0, if memory serves correctly.
All of the wins.
All right, I'm getting confirmation. Both of these players undefeated already into day 2 with their current records, is because they're basically just taking a twist on something that is proven and known and adding their own version of why they think it is better this weekend. At the end of the day, Jesse is playing a red aggro deck. Gryffindor is playing a go big green-white tokens deck. We know these are good things to be doing in the format.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Piland playing in space very similar to Jeskai Oculus, but taking an approach that is much more difficult to interact with. Mm-hmm. There's just not a lot going on that's going to interact with Monument to Endurance. You know, the Izzet decks are going to have access to some Abrades, but that's really a matchup where you're playing the control anyway. So you're going to lean on those Torch Towers a lot more. You know, we saw those discarded in the first game, but if you say, okay, the deck that can actually interact with me, well, I have this avenue to just play the control against them. That's a really good position just across the board.
Right. It's really interesting where both of these decks are leaning in where we see Piland is saying, okay, I mean, even if you rest in peace, I have so many ways to rummage and discard cards where just having cardboard is a fairly fungible resource in this style of deck. And Mishlove, at the end of the day, is saying, I don't know, I have a bunch of 5-drops and you have a bunch of 3-drops. You do the math.
I'm definitely liking the angle here of combining up the Beanstalk with Caretaker's talent. Mm-hmm. This is something I haven't really seen before, and it's pretty strong looking.
All right. Mishlove finds a 6 he likes, kicks us off with a Forest.
Once again, not a matchup that's about turn 1.
All right, well, turn 1 Mountain means turn 2 Plains. With and up the Beanstalk, back over to Piland.
Now we're getting somewhere. Slowly.
Okay, well, how about a Verge into a Guardian of New Benalia?
Still going pretty slow. Yeah, the Guardian doesn't do a ton, really, until you have the Monument in play. But once you combine them, you're really starting to do it.
Right, this is not the matchup where the protection ability is doing much. Though, it's not bad against Day of Judgment.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Getting indestructible there. You're still just playing Grizzly Bear. I mean, there's a lot of extra text on this Grizzly Bear.
Totally.
It's not the most thrilling.
Okay, well, this is pretty thrilling. A Mycosynth Garden casting a Monument to Endurance before Guardian serves for 2 more, with Mishlove spending their 3rd turn on another up the Beanstalk.
I've cast a lot of Looteril cores in my time.
Ooh.
And being able to attack for 2 and then rummage with your Monument here, like this interaction, I'm envious of Piland. This is very cool.
Oh, the Scrapwork Mutt hits the graveyard.
Just firing on all cylinders.
A draw from the Monument of Endurance. This is peak. This is magic. All right, another discard, a treasure. Are we going for the high score, Piland? I want to see it.
It makes sense to not go for the 3 life right away. If the hand's a little gummed up, though, absolutely jam.
Consider the memes for those of us in the stands.
There you go.
There it is. Exercise to the yard, 3 to the face for Mishlove, already down to 15.
I do also like, you're facing down 2 up the Beanstalks, and so that discard of Exercise is acknowledging, I'm not really keeping up on cards. I gotta kill you. And it's also saying, I'm not going to Exercise and up the Beanstalk. Come on.
Okay, so rides in on Mishlove's turn, targeting the Guardian, couple Beanstalk triggers, Piland responding, discards a Phyrexian Dragon Engine, 2nd unearthed creature in the yard, going to pick up a card for his trouble off the Monument. That's 1 trigger off that use this turn.
Rides End up the Beanstalk sure is nice. I feel like this was possibly intentional in the design of the card, but there's no way for me to know.
Yeah, no, time will tell. You can see Piland thinking, all right, are any of these cards better if they're just 0 mana Lava Spike? Or Lotus Petal?
You are really speaking my language this round, Carmen.
Oh, listen. We've been Elvish Visionary buddies for 9 years now?
9 years.
9 big ones. All right. Piland's just going to let it go. Couple cards off the top for Mishlove. Has not played a 4th land yet. Does have it. There's a Plains. And a Carrot Cake. That's a sight for sore eyes if you're rooting for Mishlove.
Oh, yeah. It's still comfortably at 15. Carrot Cake representing 3 more life. Game as it is now, you can tread water for a while before you need to turn the corner against that Monument.
The sound I just made about this rabbit token is inhuman. That is the cutest token I have ever seen. Piland, you got to throw. I'm sorry. Like, what do you do? Let that chump block?
You need to fall in the third game.
And now there's this sort of interesting game of how much is Piland trying to engage with the combat step? Whenever you know there's all these chump blockers, you have a Mycosynth Garden where if Piland thinks Mishlove doesn't really have a good answer to it, he could just go all in on sixing the opponent a bunch.
Yeah, if you got the 4th land, Garden on Monument's going to be better than a lot of potential plays. And even if you don't have the land, the treasure lets you do that. Little bit more stressful, but the line is available.
Right, it's a really unimpressive turn. So it is a real kind of planting your flag and saying, all right, this is what the game's about. You tell me.
And that is really just a fundamental thing that the Monument deck is doing. You are always taking the turn off of the battlefield to play the Monument.
Yes.
So, just registering this deck and building the deck around the card, it's saying, I think that is a good thing to do. So you just got to figure out if this is a game where it's the line.
All right. Let's see Piland reaching for a couple lands. Look at the life pad, nod.
I think it's also a lot to think about whether you want to make your land drop just because it represents a card you could discard.
Oh, okay. Phyrexian Dragon Engine off of another Mycosynth Gardens hitting the battlefield and the treasure. Discards the hand. Just a bunch of reactive cards, but that means it's all 3 triggers from the Monument.
I was going to say, importantly, a bunch being 3 cards.
Yes.
The full suite. 4th land being Mycosynth Gardens also means that once Piland decides to go in on these monuments, they will close quickly, and there is not that much damage left to be done.
Ooh, okay. Sack the treasure, Burst Lightning on the rabbit, Phyrexian Dragon Engine in for 8, then the Exile Zone. Mishlove down to 8, untapping on their 4th turn, 5th turn.
Getting mighty close to closing out is Piland. The Carrot Cake says something about that, but
That's
not
true.
a lot.
It is a real, it just kind of feels like you're getting double Rashad imported a little bit.
Yeah.
Right? Your opponent taps 2, you tap 2, world keeps on spinning.
Right. Unfortunately, usually the actions that Piland takes to trigger the Monument, the cards replace themselves. So as you said, the world keeps on spinning, and that's kind of bad for you.
Okay, well, here's Elspeth Stormslayer. This is a bunch more cards in hand for Mishlove because of those beanstalks, and a couple of chump blockers on the table. Starting to see Mishlove run away on the resource count, except for the one that it feels like Piland cares about the most.
Yeah, you definitely have seen the way that this matchup is played, and both players really playing to it. Mishlove is going to be ahead on cards and material, and Piland is going to try to close outside of the battlefield. The Monument is really how he's trying to cross the finish line.
All right, so we saw it untap, lining up 3 lands. This looks like a Tursa or maybe a Screaming Nemesis. Ooh, another Monument.
I think we're past the point where we will see all of them activated.
Or excuse me, a Mycosynth Gardens, then another Monument.
That
is
is
the normal
strong.
way. Then unearth the Scrapwork Mutt, which,
Putting in an honest day's work. The Mutt has clocked in right on time as always.
woof. All right, 1 discard, 2 draws.
I've been thinking so much about how having 2 monuments means every discard can make your opponent lose 6 life. I'm just now connecting that you get to draw 2 cards in your first discard.
Oh, yeah.
Without the fact that your other cards are already built around replacing themselves.
Yeah, it is the spot where all of a sudden it looks like Piland might actually end up with more cards in hand.
I don't even know if the beans have the advantage on the card draw anymore. That's wild.
That's heavy.
Yes. It slices, it dices, it makes your opponent lose 3 lifes. And Mishlov's got to try to find a way out of this quickly. And I think once again he's trying to think, all right, I don't think I can gain enough life. How can I possibly get to lethal damage?
Right. All of a sudden, this is about Mishlove finding a way to turn the corner and balancing that against the possibility of dying, because this 3 life from Carrot Cake is just going to put them from 8 up to 11, which isn't a new division of 6.
That's tough.
So
I'm going to double check my multiplication table, but it doesn't look good.
I'm getting out my abacus as we speak.
Overlord draws a couple cards, but notably costs mana.
That's how they get you.
Yeah, that's how they get you.
Folks up in Seattle keep putting symbols on these things. But 2 everywheres.
They let you have 2 everywheres?
Ooh, an attack for 1.
19 more of those.
All right, Elspeth making a couple more tokens. This monument deck looks nice.
Yes.
I am going to be playing Arena in my hotel room tonight.
Time to break the bank for some rare wild cards for me. And really, the way that you have so many rummaging effects to try to find that first monument, and then the way that the Mycosynth Gardens just makes it really easy to have multiples once you find the first. This deck looks like it's really consistent and powerful.
Okay, but another Carrot Cake has come down from Mishlove, which does actually change the turn math on Piland's side, and each of those Carrot Cakes is going to bring 2 of the most adorable rabbits you've ever seen with it, and those things can bite.
Yeah, they have 1 power to start with. The Elspeth's going to compound that. If we can get a Caretaker's Talent, you can actually now level it to 3 very quickly on account of that double everywhere token.
All right. Piland with an untap. Although I guess Gardens on Monument and any to discard is just 9?
That's my math.
Good math.
You can also get a little bit fancy. There's some permutations where you can discard first and make treasure tokens to keep going.
Okay, well, here's a Screaming Nemesis from Piland. That one's going to keep going into the red zone, which... That's... This is so scary if you're in Mishlove's seat.
I cannot block nor not block.
Ooh.
It is a really tough call in either direction. You go down to 5. Any discard means those monuments end the game of this turn.
It's so hard to make that block.
Yes.
It's so hard to... What do the games that you win from there look like?
Yeah, if you can no longer gain life, what is happening? I don't know. It's so tough to just say, I am dead if your discard deck can discard a card this turn.
Right. Where you know you don't have lethal on the way back next turn.
You do kind of wonder.
With a Caretaker's Talent, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. You do kind of wonder, okay, Piland started with Screaming Nemesis. Given that double monument can give you 2 cards, can give you treasure tokens, if there were a discard outlet, you have to think, why would you start on the Screaming Nemesis?
Right.
And I was talking about, I was giving some praise to the fact that Piland's deck, you play some cards that always do something. Once you have this big monument set up, the Screaming Nemesis is starting to look below average in the spread.
All right. And this block is agonizing because you know it's the whole game.
Yes.
One way or another, this is what the game is about.
I have 2 decisions. I make this one decision one way or the other.
Oh,
and I can
no block. I love this no block.
I like this call quite a lot.
Yes. All right. Let's see it, Piland. Mishlove to 5.
And it just comes down to, if you could discard a card, why didn't you start there? It seems like I would lose, right?
All right, Elegant Parlor bends a land, and Piland passes.
This is an opening.
Okay. Michelin's getting to untap. He has 2 Carrot Cakes that could both gain life from here. What a call.
And it's pretty well established that Piland is trying to draw into a discard outlet. It just was not there yet.
Okay, 3 mana the Caretaker's Talent.
Okay.
Oh, my God. Are we actually going to see a game 3 here from Mishlove? Okay, up to 2. Couple of everywheres. You can see how deliberate they're being. Drawing a card off the Caretaker's talent. All right, level 3, creature tokens get +2/+2.
We go from 5 power to 15 on this. Elspeth's threatening 5 more. That is a lethal swing.
All right, all right. Elspeth is going to put a +1/+1 counter on all of these and give them flying. This is a clean 20.
It is.
This is 20. Oh, my God. Okay. Oh my God, destroy evil on one of them.
Oh, no. Those 4/4s are evil.
Oh, my God.
They got too strong and have turned evil and are now turning dead.
Okay, Piland, tell me you did not target one of these rabbits. You didn't.
Yeah. Targeting the talent.
Target the talent.
Yeah.
This, okay, that is the thing that makes sense here. Perfect.
Right.
All right, so now it is 10 damage. Piland to 9. And look at this. It also, because Piland could have theoretically done it at a different time, prevented a card being drawn on level 2 or something, it basically tapped Mishlove out and got Mishlove to put down all of their blockers. This is Piland just going, no, this is what I think the game is about.
Right. The Carrot Cake gets to put the shields up a little bit again, but Piland gets another turn here.
All right, couple 1/1 rabbits.
And you got to figure this is Piland's last turn one way or the other.
Right. Mishlove cracking the Carrot Cake at sorcery speed to play around an instant speed way to discard cards. Super heads up.
Love a sorcery speed game action.
And look at this. This is a sorcery speed concession sending us to game 3.
You know I love a concession too. And I love seeing a game 3 in a matchup this interesting.
In the words of my dear friend and contemporary, Ryan Overturf, love a tight concession.
That's a tight concession right there.
All right, so looking back at the sideboards, we saw a couple copies of Destroy Evil. We also saw the Exercise come in out of Piland's sideboard. It feels like those were thinking about Rest in Peace to me.
Yeah, I mean, they're thinking about Resting in Peace. They certainly weren't thinking about Up the Beanstalk. We saw the Exercise discarded against that one, but just the answer to Caretaker's Talent is also significant. We did not see a Rest in Peace, but I think that you keep all of these cards in kind of regardless of that card or not. They're just going to play in the matchup.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense to me. And over on Mishlove's side, given all of these 4s and 3s, it feels like there's not much to be done or changed on play draw. These are all kind of linear.
Nah, not kind of a lot going on. I think one card we did not see in that game that if it was not in the deck previously, Piland's Chandras, the Spark Hunters, on the play, being able to get that out really in front of the Elspeth and just apply some damage and then really threaten the ultimate on that Chandra. The way that ultimate works with the Monument to compound the quick life loss. If that wasn't in the deck before, I would certainly like to see it now.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense to me. And both of these players, their sleeve game is good. We see Mishlove at the bottom, ton of different sleeves, a lot of nice foils and the like. And then up on top, Piland actually has, it looks like some of the Picture Dragon Shields, one of our sponsors for this event. Huge shout out to them. Both Beckett and Dragon Shield help keeping tabletop Magic alive in 2025.
Yeah, Dragon Shields, this is my brand. Our players have good taste and they will protect their cards well. They're tough as scales.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. All right. Do you read the little blurbs on the back of the Dragon Shield box?
You know I do.
Yeah. I love the dragon on the back of the poppy fields. His name Hank. And that brings me so much joy.
So this is a little bit of dark humor, but the joke I like to make is that the dragon on the box is the dragon that the sleeves are made out of.
Oh.
You don't sell a lot of sleeves with that line. I'm sorry.
Ooh, it's like I think there was a brand for a while that like would put the name of the cow on the ground beef or
That's
something
exactly
like
the
that.
reference that I'm making.
Right,
I do not want to know its name.
Ooh, okay, so going into the post-board games, it looks like Piland has found a hand that he likes, while Mishlove having to get a bit more creative with their opening hand.
I gotta say, the Up the Beanstalk deck, with the Caretaker's Talent, there's a lot of way to draw extra cards. Mulligan, not the most punishing thing. Making sure that you have a plan, very important for a deck this heavily built around a small sampling of cards.
Right, in a lot of ways, it feels like Mishlove isn't exactly playing a sort of combo deck in the sense that you need A plus B for your cards to do anything. But these plans are mostly, I want a couple of interaction spells, and I want one of Beanstalk, Caretaker's Talent, something like that, a card advantage engine to actually allow me to play this reactive game for several turns.
And when you talk about your marquee card being your card advantage, your card selection, when you don't have it, it's hard to find it. You're just drawing one card every turn.
All right, and love someone who marks how many cards they're going to with a die. We see Mishlove go down to 5. Had a rest in peace, a bunch of lands, and not much else. And we saw last game that Piland's deck can attack. It used the graveyard some, but it mostly was on the house because of the unearth mechanic.
I agree with you about the importance of declaring where you are mulliganing to. I think there's a lot of strengths in terms of technical skill that you can praise a person for in Magic. I don't think we talk enough about the importance and the meaning in the community of good communication between players.
I know it's something you and I share a fondness of, but just like really just crisp, clean technical presence at the table. Just saying, yes, everyone is going to know what is going on while I am playing, and it's going to make sense the whole time.
Yes.
A lot of sportsmanship in it, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, and it does not look like Mishlove is thrilled with this hand, but you do what you gotta.
Even when you're aggressively mulliganing for a small range of cards, going below 5 is always tough.
You gotta be sure.
You gotta mean it.
All right, so Piland kicking things off with an elegant parlor. Thinking about flipping over a Phyrexian Dragon Engine. Decides maybe drawing it's a bit better. All right, here's a Verge on Mishlove's side. Back over to Piland, who has that Scrapwork Mutt, discarding the Phyrexian Dragon Engine.
It could be that the hand was just full of nice ones, and just drawing one that you want to discard is of some value.
I mean, there's even a point where just casting Phyrexian Dragon Engine is a 4-power, 3-mana card.
Yeah.
There are a lot of sleepers like that, it feels like, in Standard right now as we move into the 3-year paradigm where you go, oh yeah, I guess that card's actually just pretty strong.
Game 1 really highlighted the strength of Phyrexian Dragon Engine.
With Recommission, which is also just from Brothers War.
Yeah. We're going to see the Mutt really clocking in early for an honest day's work. Actually has a good attack on 2.
All right. Here's the third land from Piland. It was not clear for a second if it was land number 3 or tanking about another 2, but it is Screaming Nemesis. Mishlove down to 15.
The position where you're on the play and your opponent's mulligan to 5. I'm back on praising the cards that just work.
Yeah, one of the things that we've talked a little bit about is how these are 2 decks that are kind of just playing clean Magic with a nice synergy component. Is Mishlove casting up the Beanstalk? Not what you want to do.
No, eventually those extra cards we saw in Game 2, the Beans over time eventually gave Mishlove the material needed to kind of get into it, but looks really rough from this spot.
Right, we're hitting the point where lands are good draws for Piland because they represent unearthing Phyrexian Dragon Engine, and spells are even better on account of them being spells.
Yeah. I cannot draw anything that I do not want.
Right.
I want material.
All right. Piland tapping a couple, exercising a Beanstalk this time. 5 coming across, Mishlove to 10.
Life totals where they are. Again, you can't take it with you. Fire it off.
It signals to me that Piland probably just has a super reactive hand.
Is that? I was actually going to say that I think that there's being a little respect paid to Day of Judgment.
Sure.
No monument, don't want to commit another creature.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And last game, It felt like if Mishlove just had 1 or 2 fewer cards, maybe that Caretaker's Talent play doesn't happen. Maybe Piland gets a couple more turns to try and find a way to discard some cards.
Right.
All right, here's Rest in Peace from Mishlove. The Gideon signature spellbook version. I like how that one looks, actually.
Yeah. Ooh, and there is that Chandra, and it looks mighty good. If we were paying a little bit of respect to Day of Judgment before, this card also does that while also turning up the heat, and the temperature is already boiling.
Okay, so let's see. We have Chandra Spark Hunter about to hop on the bike. That art's so sick.
Art is sick. That design is sick.
I have a huge soft spot. I mean, I love Chandra, but whew. And look, you can see Piland considering, are you going to respect Ride's End at this point with Screaming Nemesis? Oh, no. Okay, so this is the main phase, Get Lost, to prevent Chandra from, quote-unquote, crewing the vehicle.
Fair enough. The Chandra is more threatening than creatures on the battlefield.
I believe it also means that the vehicle isn't going to get haste, so it makes sense to attack with the mutt instead of crewing the vehicle.
Right. And now we're in a spot where a Day of Judgment would be, I'm not going to say great, but it would be essential in turning the corner and starting to right the ship here.
It's really tough because this is a spot where Chandra produces 2 different permanents that are strong against sweepers because it leaves behind a 3-power vehicle, which is just representing 3 haste power.
Right.
And look at those maps. They can get it up to 5, maybe.
Oh, my.
All right, we just saw an Elegant Parlor from Piland. Exile a land from the top. Back over to Mishlove, who does still need to make something happen here. All right, so we see an impended Overlord of the Hauntwoods. Unlikely what the doctor ordered.
No, you really got to do something about these creatures because you are just facing down lethal damage. You can't do nothing about it.
Okay, here's the land from Mishlove. Looks like there's still some game to be played.
Something like a Ride's End could potentially buy a turn.
And if you're in Piland's seat, it's so hard to not kind of feel it, where you have this sick brew, and you even are on your B plan this game, and it feels like this game is within reach.
You're talking about how at 6-0 you've already locked up day 2, but getting 7 wins, 8 wins, 9 wins on day 1, that is live for this player who's put this work into the format.
Okay, Sorcery Speed Terra Sunder. And then we see the Light Shatter going to be the last bit of damage needed for Jesse Piland to go ahead and win this match, advancing to 7-0. Both of these players going to play tomorrow, but Jesse, couple steps closer to the 9-0 on day 1 with a deck that none of us were expecting to see.